දාලා කරන්න. ඒක ඇති දැන් මේ ශබ්ද ඇති ඕකේ මේ පටිගත වෙන්නේ.
හරි. ජොන් පෙස්ටන් දෙන්න එක.
ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකක්ද වැඩක් කරන්න මම අපිට අපේ පණිවිඩයක් කියන්නේ
හොඳයි වෙන අnder දේව මේක තියන්න නැතිනම් පිනිස් ඕනේ දැන් අපේ මේ දෙන්නේ ගේන්ට මේ විනීත හොඳටම තරහා ගිහිලාම නාපයි කියලා.
ඒක පරිවර්තන කරා.
ඔව් ඒකත් ඇත්තම ප්‍රතිබාන.
නම කිව්වොත් කවුද?
නම කියන්නේ
So there is this person called Jenya and she got evidently Lokam says she got quite angry recently. So this Dhamma talk was inspired by the getting angry and it is a kind of countermeasure for that.
ඊයේ තමයි ඉතින් මෙත්තාව ගැන කතා කරන්නේ ඉතින් මට නින්ද ගියානේ.
So Lokamru wanted to give the Dhamma talk about metta already yesterday, but he fell asleep, so we were not able to have the class.
ඉතින් දැන් මම මගේ අදහසකුත් එක්ක එකක් කියනවා.
So this is some ideas that Lokamru has in connection with that.
දැන් මේ ජෙනි අවුරුදු දෙක තුන හිටියන් කතරනේ ඉඳගෙන.
So Jane stayed here for a number of years actually, like 2-3 years altogether.
ඉතින් දැන් අපි දැන් ඒ වගේ පුරුදු වෙච්ච ඒවා මේ වගේ වෙලාවට තමයි ප්‍රයෝජන ගන්න.
So it is in difficult times like these times where this whatever practice you have done before should kind of become practical for you.
දැන් භාවනා කරනවා සීලය ඉතින් මොනවා සමාධියක් ඇති කර ගන්නවානේ. ඒකේ ප්‍රයෝජනය ගන්නෙ මේ ඒ ඉගෙන ගන්න නිකයින නැන්ද ඒ අරමුණ ආවම මොකක් හරි අරමුණක් ආවම ඒ අරමුණට මේ ඉගෙන ගත්ත දේෙන් ප්‍රයෝජනයක් කරලා තිබුණා.
So with the practice we establish ourselves in some kind of level of morality or virtue as well as develop some levels of concentration, but really what those things are there for, or you can even think like we learn some things from the practice. So if it is when we are faced with difficult objects or difficult experiences where we should get the use of out of the things we learn.
දැන් මෛත්‍රී කරුණා ඒවා ගැන අපි උගා ඉගෙන ගන්න. නොයෙක් විදිහට ඉගෙන ගන්න.
So we learn about loving kindness and compassion in many different ways and all kind of different aspects about them and so on.
ඉතින් ප්‍රයෝජනයක් නැහැ ඒ ඉගෙන ගත්ත දේ මේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණේ නැත්තම්.
But if it's kind of no use if you learn all these things and when you are faced with a difficult situation that when these things are not put in practice and like then it's like useless.
වරමනක් ආවම මේ අර ඉගෙන ගත්ත එක ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙලා නැහැ.
So that was the case here that now is a difficult situation and she has practiced quite a lot, but she was not able to put those things into practice, or you can even think like the things she learned eventually should have helped her and that did not happen.
ටිකක් හරි ඉතින් ප්‍රයෝජනෙ තියෙන්න ඕනේ.
One should have at least some small amount of usage out of the practice.
මම මමදාම කියන එකක් තමයි වැටක් ගහලා හොඳට වටේට මැද පැලයක් හිටවලා ඒ පැලේ මැරිලා අර වැට හැදිලා තියෙනවා.
This is Lokamru's favorite, one of his favorite similes about this looking after plants. So you plant a seed and then you build a fence or even like small wall around it, thinking of protecting this plant. So with many people they have very nice fence or exceptionally good wall, but if they check the seed inside, it's already dead.
ඒකට පැලේ බනනොලට මැරිලා
Hmm.
වැට හොඳට ශක්තිමත්ව හැදිලා.
So some people they forget that the wall or the fence is there in order to protect the plant, and they kind of develop the fence and or the wall and forget about the plant. So and later on when they check, they can see the plant has died like long time ago.
ඔව් දැන් ඉතින් අපි මේ දැන් මේ භාවනා කරනවා මේ බණ අහනවා මේ පන්ති පවත්වනවා අභිධර්ම ඉගෙන ගන්නවා ඒවෙන් ඉතින් ප්‍රයෝජනයක් ගන්න ඕනේ.
So here we meditate, we study, we go to Dhamma classes, we learn about Abhidhamma. But actually the main thing should be whatever we are doing here, we should get some practical usage out of it.
ඔව් එතකොට ඒක මේ ජීවිතයට සම්බන්ධ නැත්නම් අධ්‍යාපනය කළාට
So if it's just on the level of like education you have gotten, which has nothing to do with your actual life, then it's kind of not satisfactory.
ඔයක විභාගයකටත් හොඳයි ඒ ජීවිතයටත් හොඳයි.
So okay, it's good if you have to do some kind of pass or some exams like school exams, then it's okay. But it's really good if it has also some other impact in your normal real life.
ඔව් දැන් ඉතින් බුදුහාමුදුරු දේශනා කළා තියෙන නහි වේරේන වේරාමි සම්මාන්තිද කුදාචන අවේරණජ සම්මාන්තේ සම්දම්මෝ සනන්තන.
So this Lokam said there is this piece of Dhamma that the Buddha taught. It's a quotation from Dhammapada. From Dhammapada, starting it's this kind of quite popular couple of verses, starting Nahi Verena Verani. So it's like you don't overcome enmity by enmity, and then it continues. Ari tiken
නහි වේරේන වේරාමි
haturin haturin
සම්මාන්තිද කුදාචන
kar sammantiya kudacha.
සම්මාන්තිද කුදාචන මොකක්ද මලගේ තේරි හොඳට කියන්නේ.
අවදාවත් සංසිඳෙන්නේ නැහැ.
ඔව් කවදාකවත් ඒ සංසිඳෙන්නේ
So enmity by enmity can never be allied. Like
ඔව් කුදාචන කියන කවදාකවත්
තැන්පත් කවදාවත් ඒක සංසිඳෙන්නේ
So by enmity is never allied.
අවේරෙන්නජ සම්මාන්ති.
It is through non-enmity that is like put at peace.
ඒස ධම්මෝ සනන්තන මේ මගේ සනාත ධර්මයි. සනාත ධර්මයි කියන්නේ ලෝකේ හදටම පවතින තියෙන එකක් ධම්මලා.
ඒක හැමදාම තියෙන ධර්මතාවය.
This is the, you can say like law of the world, you know? Yeah, it's like that's the natural law.
ඔව් ඉතින් දැන් අපි මේ රණ්ඩුවක් නම් රණ්ඩුවේ වෙන්න එක නෙවෙයි.
So if you are fighting like that here means both like arguing and really fighting, so you cannot overcome with this by another like increasing or putting some more fighting.
ඔය ගාතාව කියලා තමයි ජේ.ආර් මහත්තයා මේ ජපානයේ අල්ලගත්තේ. ජපානයේ උගා සලකනවනේ යාට.
So now actually Lokam mentioned this some time ago. Japan became Japan and Japanese people became very favorable towards Sri Lanka. The reason for that was after the Second World War, there was some conference of this like I think like UN, like international community of these leaders, and they were trying to decide what to do with these like Germans and Japanese that were doing a lot of trouble during the war. And one of the like Sri Lankan politicians that became a president eventually, he actually said we should take advice from these Buddha's verses, like you cannot ever overcome enmity by enmity. It is by non-enmity that it's overcome, and that's the natural law. So and actually it kind of helped, and this advice, and they took that into account, and as a result, now Japan and Sri Lanka have very good like relations.
ඉතින් දැන් ඒ වගේ මේ අපි කවුරු හරි එක්කලා මේ රණ්ඩු වෙනවා නම් ඒ රණ්ඩුව සම්මතයකට පත් කරන්න කතා කරන නිසා ඒකට නැවත මේක වැඩි වෙන්න කතා කරන්න හොඳ නැහැ. ඒක තරහ වෙන්නත් හොඳ නැහැ.
So if you have an argument with somebody, so getting upset or more angry because of that is not the way of solving that problem. Or also you cannot really solve it if you like try think you can like argument it away or like by putting some stronger arguments like argument it away, it's not going to work.
ඔව් දරගෑජ ලං වෙලා තිබුණොත් නේ දර ගින්න පැවිදෙන එකට ලං වෙලා තිබුණොත් නේ ඊළඟ කෑල්ලට ඇවිදෙන්නේ. ඔව් නෑ ගින්දර ඇත්තටම ඇවිදෙන්නේ.
Because it's like if you consider firewood, so you have, let's say, if you have a burning branch and you put some branch next to that, then it catches the fire also. So it's something like that.
ඉතින් මේකට හොඳ මේ ජාතක කතාවක් තියෙනවා.
There is a very nice illustration story in the Buddha's birth story.
ඔව් මේ දීගණක කෝසල ජාතකය.
This name of this particular birth story is called Diganak Kosala.
Digiti Kosala. Digiti Kosala.
ඔව් මේ කොසල් රජුවම මේ අල්ලගත්ත වේදිය රජු. අල්ලගත්තේ හදිය.
So there were this Kosala kingdom was let's say there is this confluence of Ganges and Yamuna, like few rivers. It's a bit like towards the north central part of India, and Vedaki and Magadha.
ඔව්
And then the Rajagaha area, they were called the Vedaha kingdom,
ඔව් ඊට
which is
පස්සේ
like, let's say, east or a bit of southeast from there. They were kind of big kingdoms. Kaudalagati.
මේ වේදිය රජු අල්ලගත්ත කෝසල රජු කෝසල.
Dinuna Kosala?
නෑ කෝසල පරාදයි.
So at one point, what happened was this king of Kosala, that's the like western, I will just call them like western and eastern kingdom. So the western kingdom was caught by the eastern kingdom.
දැන් ඉතින්
Overpowered.
වද මල් පලන්දලා බෙරගක අරන් යනවා එයාගේ නෝනවයි මරන්නේ.
So then, because they lost the king as well as as the queen were captured, and in those days they had probably some like custom of the defeated kings. They had to wear this garland of one specific flowers, Vadamada.
වදමල්.
Hibiscus, you know the red hibiscus. So they put like a wreath of hibiscus flowers. That was like signaling this is the defeated one, and they were like bring him in a kind of procession for the execution.
ඔව් ඉතින් අරන් යනකොට කුමාරයා වයස නැහැ පොඩි.
Kosala.
කෝසලගේ එයා කෑ ගාගෙන මම්මයි තාත්තනක තියෙන දෙනවා ඇතින්.
So then the king and queen were taken away in this kind of ceremonial way. They had a son, and this young prince was a real kind of still a small boy. So he was crying and trying to get to his parents.
ඔව් එතකොට මේ කොසල් රජුරෝ කියනවා දීගන් කෝසල ඈත බලව ළඟ නොබල ඈත බලන්න ළඟ බලන්න එපා.
So but he told him, watch it from distance, don't watch it from close, from nearby. So that's what the father called to his small son.
ඔව් තුන්දරක ඈත බලව
So then, but this small boy still wanted to come and visit the parents. So then the captured king was again shouting at him, watch it from the distance, don't come nearby.
දීගනක ඈත බලව ළඟ නොබල දීගනක ඈත බලව ළඟ නොබල.
Digiti Kosala is the name of the Jataka, but Diganaka may be the name of the Kosala.
So the boy was called Diganaka. So the father king was calling like Diganaka, watch it from distance, don't come here, don't come near.
No, actually it's not from distance. See distance.
Look to the distance.
Yes.
Sorry.
ඈත බලන්න ළඟ බලන්න එපා.
Okay.
තුන්දරයක් කිව්වා. ඉතින් ඊට පස්සේ ඒ කිව්ව එක එයාට තේරුණා.
So correction. So he was telling him like, watch far, don't look nearby.
ඉතින් දැන්
So then, after being told this by 3 times by the father, the kid kind of understood.
රටේ මිනිස්සු දන්නවනේ මේ පොඩි එක්කෙනා කුමාරයා කියලා.
So the people there, they knew this is actually the prince.
ඒ දුප්පත් ගෙවල් වල තමයි හැදෙන්නේ දැන්.
So and later on, he was actually brought up in some like poor family.
ඊළඟට මේ වරන් හදන්න එක හිටියා. කුඹකාර.
So he was a potter. The profession he started following was making pots.
දැන් එහෙම ඉඳී කියලා කවුරුත් හිතන්නේ
So nobody would think this kind of potter boy is actually a prince.
ඉන්නවන් සංගීතය ඉගෙන ගත්තා.
So then he learned singing after.
violin හොඳට පුරුදු වුණා.
And he learned this Veena kind of violin, Indian kind of violin called Veena. So he learned playing that well.
දැන් මේකේ උඟාක් දුරට මේ උඟාක් හොඳ මිහිරි විදියට වීණා ගායන බොහොම ඉහළටම ඉගෙන ගත්තා.
So he learned it he was really capable kind of. So he was able to play and sing in a very sweet way that was like he became far and wide known, and like his voice was sweet and able to carry far away.
දැන් රජුරු ආරාධනා කරා මේ වයිලින් වාදකයෙක් කියන එයාට ඇවිල්ලා මේ සතුටු කරවන්න කියලා.
Vedita.
වේද.
So then this king, the Eastern Kingdom king, that was the Ammatata Olukapala.
කමල්ලානේ.
So the parents, they were executed. Okay, so this like it was not mentioned, but they like after giving the advice to this small boy, they were taken and really like executed. So anyway, this boy became a potter boy, then learned playing this veena and sing, and he became very quite famous. So the king from the Eastern Kingdom learned about it and invited him to play in his palace.
දැන් ඒ වීණා වාදනය කරලා යනවා.
So he playing the violin, the veena, he was like approaching the palace of that Eastern Kingdom.
දැන් ඊට පස්සේ කිව්වා මේ යන්න එපා මේ රජගෙදරම නතර වෙන්න කියලා.
So he came to the Raju to
වීණා වාදනය කරන්න.
Raju කැමති නිසා
යන්න එපා රජගෙදර.
So the king liked the play very much. So he told this Diganaka, like, please stay here, don't go away.
දැන් රජගෙදරම රජුරන්ට සේවය කරනවා.
So he stayed there, and he was one of the servants in that royal kingdom, royal household of his like own parents.
දැන් ඉතින් එයාට ඔය දුප්පත් ගෙවල් වල ආරමේ යන්න දියන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් දැන් රාජ්‍යයකින් ඊට පස්සේ එයාට ඇමතිකමක් දුන්නා.
So anyway, he was brought up in poverty, like when his parents died. So now he was living in the luxury of the palace, and eventually he was given a post of a minister.
එහෙම ගිහලා දැන් ප්‍රධාන මිනිස්ටර් කෙනෙක්
So then after some time he became like something like a prime minister.
දැන් රජුරු එක ගමන් යන්නේ රජුරන්ගේ ආරක්ෂා ඔක්කොම
So
ආයත.
then he became like the right hand of the king. So he was like always accompanying the king and looking after him and protecting him.
ඉතින් දැන් මෙයාට බොහොම මිත්‍රයි රජුරු තමන්ගේ දරුවෙක් වගේ.
So the king liked him very much, and the king was liked him so much. He was considering him as something like a son.
සාදාකම් වේදේහට යන්න යනවා වාහනේ.
So one day they were traveling like that.
මෙයා තමයි මේක ඩ්‍රයිවරුත් එයාමයි.
So those days they were using these chariots. So the king was just riding it, and the charioteer was this Digana.
දැන් ඇමතියත් එයා දැන් එයාමයි මේ යන්නේ දෙන්න මේ එන වෙන පාරක් දැන් අර කොසල් රට බලන්න යන්නේ.
So what day was it was like inspection of the kingdom, and it was the prime minister and the king, and they were going around the kingdom and seeing how the things were doing.
ඉතින් කියන මග දැන් යන වේගේ වැඩිනේ යනවා. ඉතින් කිව්වා පුතා මේ මා ටිකක් වෙහෙසයි නතර කරලා නිදාගමු කියලා.
So they were going quite fast anyway. So then this king said, "Now, son, listen, I am kind of tired out. Let's stop a bit and rest."
දැන් මේ කකුල ඔළුවට කකුලේ ඔළුව තියලා
So they stopped,
කොසල්
and
කුමාර
the king lied down and used this Diganaka's lap as a pillow. So this boy was now he was a young man, was sleeping with his own father's and mother's murderer and head in his lap.
දැන් මම දිගනක කොසල් කුමාරයන්ට හිතෙනවා දැන් බෙල්ල කපලා දාන්න ඕනේ මෙයාගේ.
Kumar.
ඔව් කුමාර දෙන්න.
So then when the king was like kind of getting ready to sleep, was falling asleep, then he thought, now is a good time if I cut his throat.
දැන් නෑ ඕනේ නෑ කියලා අපව දැන්.
So and he was like getting ready his dagger, but then he said, no need. So the dagger again. Yes.
ආයෙත් හිතෙන.
So again he thought, no, like, this is the really good opportunity. Let me cut his throat, and he was getting the knife or the dagger ready, and then again, no, okay, no need.
ඔව් ආයෙත් හිතෙනවා.
So then for the third time he thought, no, this is like the rare opportunity. Really, if I want to do it at one point, this is the time to do
ඒ
it.
තුන්වෙනි සැරේ දකින්නකොට රජුරෝ හීනයක් දකින්න.
So as this Diganaka, the former prince, was going through this internal battle, the king was already asleep and he was having a dream.
ඔව් දිගනක කොසල් කුමාරයන්ට අහුවෙලා තනි වෙලා බෙල්ල කපුවා යාළුවා. හීනෙන් දැක්කා. ඔව්.
So what the king saw in his dream was that he got caught and he was අහුවෙලා.
ඔව් රජුරන්ව
Oh.
දිගනක කොසල් කුමාරයන්ට අහුවෙලා ඒ කොසල් කුමාරයෝ
So in the dream he saw in the dream he saw this like character that in the dream he understood this is the prince that is son of those the king and queen I like executed, and so in the dream he was caught by this prince and the prince cut off his head or slit his throat. So that was the kind of nightmare he was having while this prince was actually thinking of doing it.
ඔව් ඉතින් ඊට පස්සේ මේ අල්ලගත්තා කොසල් කුමාරයන් දැන් කපනවා බෙල්ල.
So then, like this was the third time the former prince made up his mind and grabbed the king by the top knot. The kings used to have long hair and kind of top knots, so he caught him by hair and he was really nice.
ඒ කවුරුත් නෙමෙයි මාම ගමන් දිගන කොසල් කියන්නේ.
And so Diganaka also so he said, now you should know I know no one other than the prince of Kosala.
ඒකට කිව්වා සමාවදියන් කියලා.
So then this eastern kingdom's king said, oh please then accept my apology.
ඔව් ඉතින් සමාව දුන්නා.
And this prince then pardoned him.
එතකොට සමාව දීලා ඊට පස්සේ රජකම යුවරජකම පැවැත්තුවා. පාමිතන දුන්නා.
කාටද?
කොසල් කුමාරයන්ට. දැන් ආපහු ගිහින් ඒ වැඩක් කරගෙන ආපහු ගිහිල්ලා යුවරජුට. යුවරජකම දුන්නා.
So when they finished the tour of the country, this eastern king made the Diganaka as heir apparent, is the word, and I don't know. It's from Rokoham said he actually like relinquished his own kingship, and then the Diganaka became the king.
ඔව් ඊට බුදුහාමුදුරු දේශනා කරනවා මේ රජවරු එක්කලා රණ්ඩු වෙනවා ආයෙත් එකතු වෙනවා ඒගොල්ලෝ සමාවෙ වෙනවා මේ ආයෙත් එකතු වෙනවා කට්ටිය. රජවරු එක්ක සම්දු වෙලා සමගි වෙනවා.
Yeah. So if I understood correctly, then the Buddha finished this story and said, this is what happens with the kings. Did I understand correctly that the kings, they get like into fights and then they make up and then they again get into fights and then again make up.
සාක්‍යෝ එක්ක ෆයිට් වෙනවා සමාව දෙනවා.
Huh?
සාක්‍යෝ
And then the Buddha was from the clan called the Sakyans. So then the Buddha said the Sakyans are like that. The Sakyans, they get into fights and arguments in between themselves. Then they make up again and then they get into fights again, and it goes on like that.
බ්‍රාහ්මණය එක්ක රණ්ඩු වෙනවා ආයෙත් සමගි වෙනවා.
So then you have the Brahmins, that one caste, one of the castes, they also argue and fight between themselves, then make up and then again fight and so on.
එතකොට සිටුවරු එක්ක රණ්ඩු වෙනවා.
So the Kshatriyas
ඔව්.
also the warrior, the ruling caste of India, like that. And the merchants, or especially the rich merchants and millionaires, they also fight and then they come kind of make up, and so this is what is always happening.
ඊට පස්සේ ගාපතියොත් එක්කලා
So also the just householders, they get into fights and they make up and then get into fights and then make up.
රජවරු එක්ක රණ්ඩු වෙන්නේ මේ ධනෙට.
So now there was further explanation. The kings, they get into fights over inheritance.
ඒ වගේ ඒ බමුණ එක්ක එක්ක දිට්ඨිය නෙමෙයි අධ්‍යාපනයේට එහෙම නැත්නම් ධනෙට.
So the Brahmins, they get into fights either because of knowledge or education, or also because of inheritance.
කොහොමද පිටුවරු ධනෙට?
So also the millionaires, it's really about wealth.
පැවිද්දෝ එක්ක රණ්ඩු වෙනවා දිට්ඨිය වලට.
But the I don't know, your favorite sutra. But this is this is actually sutta which says the kings, they get arguments because of countries and money and so on. But they're one of the list is monks or people that are into serious spiritual practice. So with those, the Buddha says, those get into arguments about views.
මම මේ දවස්වල දැකලා නැහැ. ඉතින් මේ කඳුබඩ ඉන්නකොට මම අම්මෝ හරියට දකිනවා.
So these days I could not see that too much, but those days when I was in the old Kandu Buddha center, I could see this part, how the monks are getting into arguments over different viewpoints.
ආරණ්‍ය වල මොකක් හරි උරුවරන්නේ දිට්ඨිය වලටමයි ගහගන්නේ. දිට්ඨිය වලටමයි රණ්ඩු වෙන්නේ.
So is the monks, even in the forest monasteries, always they are fighting about some views.
ඉතින් දැන් බුදුහාමුදුරුවෝ මේ පැවිද්දෝ එක්ක රණ්ඩු වෙනවා. පැවිද්දෝ යාළු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මේ ඒ දිට්ඨිය වලම ඉන්නවයි කියලා.
And the difference was with the kings and others, it was they get into fights, then become friends again. But with the older, the spirit, so-called spiritual practitioners, they get into fights over different views, but they don't make up. They just stay fighting over the views continuously.
ඒ දිට්ඨිය අතාරින්නෙත් නැහැ.
They don't let go of their views and they fight.
ඒ දැන් මම ඊට පස්සේ දීගණ කෝසල දීගණක සූත්‍රය කිව්වා. ඒක දිට්ඨිමනේ තියෙන්නේ. දිට්ඨි ගැන තමයි.
So there is Majjhima Nikaya. Okay. So there is Diganaka Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya that was given to this person called Diganaka. So that sutta is really about views.
දීගණක පරිබ්‍රාජකට කියන්නේ.
So here it's the Diganaka, that is a kind of they call them wanderers of other sects in the English translations, but you can see they are different spiritual seekers or
මජ්ක්‍ධිම නිකායේ මෙතෙන් තියෙනවා. මජ්ක්‍ධිම නිකාය නේද වෙන්නේ? අන්න එක අපි කියමු පොඩ්ඩක් ඉංග්‍රීසි. දිගන හරි හොඳ සූත්‍රය ටිකයි. වෙලාව තියෙනවා පැය විනාඩි 20ක්.
Count the,
මේක තමයි.
wonder who is the good speaker of Dhamma?
ධම්මරාගිතට යන්න එපා. ධම්මරාගිත යනවා යන්න ඒකයි.
Huh?
හා. ධම්මරාගිත මේ දැන් ආයෙත් යනවා ඒකයි. කියලා යන්න වෙලාව මදි ඒකයි. ඔයාලට කියන්න පුළුවන් නේද? ඔයා වෙනද පොත කිව්වන්නේ මගේ? අයියෝ බොරුවට කියලා. ආයි කමන්නේ. සාරිපුත්තාන් රහත්තුන තැනනේ.
සෑහෙන දිගයි සමහර.
එච්චර දිගද?
ඒ වේදනා පරික්ෂණ.
ඕක තමයි. හරි.
Thus I have heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the Boar's Cave in the mountain Vacha Peak. Then the wanderer Diganika went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side and said to the Blessed One, Master Gautama, my doctrine and view is this: nothing is acceptable to me. This view of yours, Ajivasana, Agivasana, sorry, nothing is acceptable to me, is not at least that view acceptable to you, is not at least that view acceptable to you. If this view of mine were acceptable to me, Master Gautama, it too would be the same. It too would be the same. Well, Agivasana, there are plenty in the world who would say, it too would be the same. It too would be the same. Yet they do not abandon that view and they take up still some other view. Those are few in the world who would say, it too would be the same. It too would be the same. And who would abandon that view and do not take up some other view? Agivasana, there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: everything is acceptable to me. There are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: nothing is acceptable to me. And there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me. Among these, the view of those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view, everything is acceptable to me, is close to lust, close to bondage, close to delighting, close to holding, close to clinging. The view of those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view, nothing is acceptable to me, is close to non-lust, close to non-bondage, close to non-delighting, close to non-holding, close to non-clinging. When this was said, the wanderer Diganaka remarked, Master Gautama commends my point of view. Master Gautama recommends my point of view. Agivasana, as to those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view, something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me. The view of theirs as to what is acceptable is close to lust, close to bondage, close to delighting, close to holding, close to clinging, while these view of theirs as to what is not acceptable is close to non-lust, close to non-bondage, close to non-delighting, close to non-holding, close to non-clinging. Now, Agivasana, a wise man amongst those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view, everything is acceptable to me, considers thus: if I obstinately adhere to my view, everything is acceptable to me, and declare, only this is true, anything else is wrong, then I may clash with the two others, with a recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine and view, nothing is acceptable to me, and the recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine and view, something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me. I may clash with these two, and when there is a clash, there are disputes. When there are disputes, there are quarrels. And when there are quarrels, there is vexation. Thus, foreseeing for himself clashes, disputes, quarrels, and vexations, he abandons that view and does not take up some other view. This is how there comes to be abandoning of these views. This is how there comes to be relinquishing of these views. A wise man amongst those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine in view, nothing is acceptable to me, considers thus: if I obstinately adhere to my view, nothing is acceptable to me, and declare, only this is true, anything else is wrong, then I may clash with the two others. But a recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine in view, everything is acceptable to me, and with a recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine in view, something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me. I may clash with these two, and when there is a clash, there are disputes. When there are disputes, there are quarrels. When there are quarrels, there is vexation. Thus, foreseeing for himself clashes, disputes, quarrels, and vexation, he abandons that view and does not take up some other view. This is how there comes to be the abandoning of these views. This is how there comes to be a relinquishing of these views. A wise man amongst those recluses and Brahmins who holds this doctrine in view, something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me, considers thus: if I obstinately adhere to my view, something is acceptable to me, something is not acceptable to me, and declare, only this is true, anything else is wrong, then I may clash with the other two. With the recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine in view, everything is acceptable to me, and with the recluse or Brahmin who holds the doctrine in view, nothing is acceptable to me. I may clash with these two, and when there is a clash, there are disputes. When there are disputes, there are quarrels. When there are quarrels, there is vexation. Thus, foreseeing himself clashes, disputes, quarrels, and vexation, he abandons that view and does not take up some other view. This is how there comes to be the abandoning of these views. This is how there comes to be the relinquishing of these views. Now, Agivasana, this body, made up of material form, consisting of the four great elements, procreated by a mother and a father, and built up out of boiled rice and porridge, is subject to impermanence, to being worn and rubbed away, to dissolution and disintegration. It should be regarded as impermanent, as suffering, as a disease, as a tumor, as a dart, as a calamity, as an affliction, as alien, as the disintegrating, as void, as not so. When one regards this body thus, one abandons desire for the body, affection for the body, subservience to the body. There are, Agivasana, three kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. On the occasion when one feels pleasant feeling, one does not feel painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant feeling. On that occasion, one feels only pleasant feeling. On the occasion when one feels painful feeling, one does not feel pleasant feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant feeling. On that occasion, one feels only pleasant feeling. On the occasion when one feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, one does not feel pleasant feeling or painful feeling. On that occasion, one feels only neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Pleasant feeling, Agivasana, is impermanent, conditioned and dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and ceasing. Painful feelings too is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and ceasing. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling too is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away, and ceasing. Seeing thus, a well-taught noble discipline becomes disenchanted with pleasant feeling, disenchanted with painful feeling, disenchanted with neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Being disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. A bhikkhu whose mind is liberated thus, Agivasana, sides with none and disputes with none. He employs the speech currently used in the world without adhering to it. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was standing behind the Blessed One, fanning him. Then he thought, the Blessed One indeed speak to us of the abandoning of these things through direct knowledge. The Sublime One indeed speaks to us of the relinquishing of these things through direct knowledge. As the Venerable Sariputta considers this, though not clinging, his mind was liberated from the taints. But in the wanderer Diganika and the spotless immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose.
No, then I could take a ferry with the people.
All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. The wanderer Diganika saw the Dhamma, attained the Dhamma, understood the Dhamma, fathomed the Dhamma. He crossed beyond doubt, did away with perplexity, gained intrepidity, and became independent of others in the teacher's dispensation. Then he said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent. Master Gautama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright that what has been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of the Bhikkhus. From today, let Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life.
දැන් ඔගේ හොඳ මේක තමයි දිට්ඨි ගැන කතාවක් නැහැ. බුදුහාම මේ නිකන් මේ ශරීරේ දිට්ඨියකින් ඇදලා නෙවෙයිනේ අම්මා තාත්තගේ එකතු වෙනුයි කවල පුල අදම මේ ශරීරේ රූපේ.
So Loka says the important
මොන නේකදී
part there is this like the three kinds of ascetics mentioned and how they have these views and abandon them, but after that the Buddha takes the body. So he says the body is made out of elements and produced by mother and father and like being
කවල පුල
brought up or fed up. Can I say fed up? No. Being fed this rice and food and made so for that you don't need any views.
ඔගේ දිට්ඨියක් වෙදදී.
So how like you don't need any view about that the body is here and it's from mother father and you sustain it with food.
ඉතින් රූපයක් ඇදුනා නම් වේදනා හැදෙනවා. ඉතින් ඔබ දුක රූපේ.
So then if you have body there are feelings or experiencing happening. They are either pleasant, painful or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. If you have body you have experience.
එහෙනම් දිට්ඨියකින් හැදෙන්නේ.
So this does not arise through any kind of view, it's just there.
ඒක හත ගන්නවා පවතිනවා නැති.
So what is there is it arises, then it is like kind of there, and then it's disappears.
ඉතින් ඒකවල පටිච්චසමුප්පාද දැන් දිගටම යනවා දෙය.
So then there are other points mentioned there in the sutta how you can turn this to this like disenchantment, cessation and so on, and like take it up to the liberation through understanding those basic facts.
ඉතින් මේ අපිව රකින්න කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා, අපිව බලන්න කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. හා? ඉතින් එක එක මත තියෙනවනේ.
So we have different ideas that there is somebody
අපි රකින්න
oh
ආරක්ෂා කරන්න.
oh
ඉතින් අපි බලන්න අපි දිහා
taking අපිට වෙන
නෑ නේ ඔය දේව කොටස් වගේ මොනවාරි එහෙම
okay so I needed to clarify. So we have this idea that there is somebody watching over us or protecting us and things like that.
දැන් ඒ වගේ දිට්ඨි වලට හැරුණොත් එහෙම මිනිස්සුયો මේ අපේ ගමනට හුඟක් බාධායි.
So once people get into that kind of stuff, it is a big obstacle for the practice.
ඉතින් හතරගෙන නැති වෙන අරමුණු තියෙනවා.
What is there definitively is arising and disappearing objects of experience.
දැන් සුඛ වේදනා දුක්ඛ වේදනා දුක්ඛම සුඛ වේදනා
always there is either pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant.
දැන් ඔය රණ්ඩු කියන්නේ එහෙම එකක්.
So actually the argumenting itself is just that. There are pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant or unpleasant feelings.
ඔව් ඉතින් ඔය ඒවට ඉතින් අපි මැදි වෙච්චාම ඉතින් අපි නිකන් වැඩක් නැති දුක් වේදනා විඳිනවා.
Meditation can
කියන්නේ අපිත් දැන් රණ්ඩුවකට
oh.
අපිත් මැදි
අහුණු.
වෙනවා. ආවුණු රණ්ඩුවකට.
So if you like, I know that like get caught into, but I think the word is almost like if there is like a swamp and you like start sinking into this. So if you like get caught into these things, it's like getting out of this like swampy thing.
පුළුවන් තරම් බුදුහාම දහම තුලින් අපි දික්ටි වලට බහින්න නැතුව ඉන්න හදාගත්තොත් හරි.
So Buddha's teachings is about really not getting like caught by any kind of use.
ඒක තමයි ලොකුම දේ.
So that's actually the big great thing there is not falling into any kind of use at all.
පටිච්චසමුප්පාදේ තියෙනවා. සතිපට්ඨාන තියෙනවා. ඒ ඇති
What's there is the dependent origination and the Eightfold Noble Path. Using that you have the Satipatthana, the foundations of Sati.
මේක ඉතින් කියාගෙන යනකොට තේරුන්නේ දැන් මේ ශරීරේවා.
If you just like follow the practice, like practicing the Satipatthana and so on, you will get to see and understand about those things.
ඉතින් අපි මේ ශරීරයට බුදුහාම උපමාවක් දුන්නා.
So for the body itself, the Buddha gave us illustrations of similes.
ඔව් මේක මැටි බඳුනක් වගේ කිව්වා. මැටි වලින් අදපු
Oh,
බඳුනක් කලයක් වළඳක් වගේ.
so it's like earthen pot.
මැටි පොට් එක.
Oh,
කුඹුපමං කායමේ මං විදිත්වා.
so Lokam quoting is some having seen and the Gitva actually is that translate. It means like almost like actually like experienced or known the body as earthen or clay pot.
තමලා කිව්වා එන අරවත් අරගන්න රෙඩිත් අරන් යන්න මම පින් අනුමෝදන් කරලා කියන්න දැන් මේ තමලා කිව්වත් ඒ කියන්නේ බණ කියන ඒත් මම හරියටත් කරනවා හොඳයි රූපත්
මේක ඔෆ් කරලා යන්න
David knows what to do about it.
no they just
So we just obala nikal there.
so Bala can you keep the phone with you till I come back
හොඳයි
I will keep it in this library Lokohama's bookcase.
මේක දැන් වහලා අරන් යන්න
I'll come back
මේක අරන් යන්නකො
දැන් මම ලකලැස්සිලා එනකොට තව ටිකක් රෙකෝඩ් වෙන්න පුළුවන්
හොඳයි දැන් මං කිව්ව එකක් මතක නැහැ කුඹුපමං කායම මේ වළඳක් වගේ මේ ශරීරය කිව්වා.
So this is like having known or experienced the body like seeing the body is like an earthen pot.
ඔව් ඒක උංග පරිත්තම් කරන්න වෙනවා මොකද හරි හයියෙන් වැඩුණොත් එම් බෙදෙනවා.
So why the earthen pot is because like clay pot or earthen pot you cannot like be careless with a pot because if you just throw it somewhere it cracks.
පොඩි දෙයකින් ලෙඩ දුක් හැදෙනවා අර මෙහෙන කරද.
So the body is like that even with small things it starts getting all kind of small problems and sicknesses. So,
ඒවා දිට්ඨිය වලින් හැදෙනවා නේද?
and this is not arising out of any kind of view.
ඊළඟට මේ කුඹුප්පං කායම නගරූපං චිත්ත මිදන්ත පෙත්ත මේක අපේ හිත
And the mind is seen experience as a like seen it's like a city.
නගරය හොඳට ආරක්ෂා කරන්න ඕනේ.
So if you consider cities in especially like you have to imagine Buddha's times, so that was something that you need to protect.
ඔව් දැන් අපේ සිත ආරක්ෂා කළේ නැත්තම් මේක ඇතුලේ හැදෙන උන් ටික එකම රණ්ඩු වෙන්න වෙන්නේ.
So like you have to have like big walls and kind of security and order in the city, otherwise it gets into all kind of all kind.
ඔය ක්‍රෝධය ෆයිට් එක අර අපිට ඒක
and
නෙමෙයි.
so Lokam says if we don't protect the mind, then all kind of things are rampant like that.
ඔව්.
Envy, malice, jealousy, anger, like revengefulness, all kind of like nasty things.
ඔව්, නගරය ඇතුලේ හොඳ හොඳ ඒවාත් තියෙනවා.
But if in the city there are also very good things.
ඔව්. අර නරක දේවල් මල්ල ගන්න කියව නගරේ තියෙන ඒ නගරේ වැඩක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අර හොඳ දේවලුත් තියෙනවා නගරය ඇතුලේ. මේකේ සද්දාව තියෙනවා, වීදියේ තියෙන හොඳ හොඳ ඒවාත් තියෙනවා මේක
So
ඇතුලේ.
like there are really good, like you cannot just like like think less or like abandon the city or something like that only because there are bad things there, because there are also good things there. Like in the mind you have the faith, energy, sati and things like that.
ඔව්, හොඳක් සද්දාව එතකොට ඒවයි අලෝභය, අද්වේෂය,
Non-greed, non-hatred and non-delusion.
ඒ නගරේ හොඳ පැත්තයි නරක පැත්තයි දෙකක්
So
තියෙනවා.
the town or city like that has like potential going both ways.
ඔව්, හුඟක් බෝධත්වයක් තියෙනවා නගරේ ඇතුලේ දුප්පත්යක් තියෙනවා. දැන් අකුසල් පැත්තේ ඉන්නවා, කුසල් පැත්තේ ඉන්නවා. වෙන එකක් කියමු.
No, look, I said like there are like poor people and rich people, and that was supposed to mean wholesome and unwholesome. But then the question might arise, who is the wholesome and who is the unwholesome?
ඔව්, ඒක දියුණු මනුස්ස මිනිස්සු තියෙනවා.
Okay, so there are like industrial good people in the town that are like hard working and doing so, and then there are these like bad elements and like people they just are loitering and sponging other people and so on. So
ඔව්, ඉතින්
you have all kind of elements in the city.
නගරේ අයිතිකාරයා නගරේ ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න ඕනේ. දෙගොල්ල තුන් ඒගොල්ලෝ කුඩු කාරී ඉන්න කෙනෙක් තියෙනවා.
The owner or people in charge of the city then has to manage the situation properly. Like he said, he has to address the situation about these like drug addicts and crooks and other people and manage the city.
මේ සිතත් එහෙම එකක්.
So the mind is likewise the mind is willing to manage it in a similar way.
ඔව්, යෝදේත මාරම් පඤ්ඤායුදේන ඊතං චරක්ඛේ අනිවීස නොසී. නෑ, ඒතොර ඊතං චරක්ඛේ අනේ දැන් මේක ආරක්ෂා යෝදේත මාරම් කියලා කියන්නේ මේ අපේ කෙලෙස් මාරුව තියෙනවනේ. කෙලෙස් මාරුව ටික අයින් කරගන්න ඕනේ.
So one is to battle and remove the Mara. Here it means the Mara of the defilements.
පඤ්ඤායුදේන පාවුදේන පඤ්ඤා.
And the weapon you use to like defeat this Mara of defilements is the weapon of wisdom.
ඒක අරගත්තොත් හරියව අතට පඤ්ඤා.
So if you manage to get hold, or if you as they say, if you wield the weapon of wisdom, you are
ඒකාන්තයෙන්ම මේ නගරය ආරක්ෂා කරන්නත් පුළුවන්, ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්නත් පුළුවන්.
By wielding the weapon of wisdom, one can protect the city or one can achieve the victory. That should be enough.
නගරේ
And
දිනන්න
that is for today also.
නගරේ දිනන්න දෙනීට කියන්න ඕනේ ඇතුලේ තියෙන හොඳයි ගන්න නරකයි අයින් කරන්න.
So for the protection of the city,
වෙලාවටම ගියා.
for the protection of the city, for the protection of the city of Lokamu, that was the last thing he said was, if you want to protect it, you just need to like identify and remove the bad elements and invite and keep and support the good elements in the city. That's all. So, may you be well and happy. And thanks for listening.